We're gonna start now. Welcome everybody to the MBTI. This is our last one of the day, and we're gonna have Mark and Luke talking about coexistence. Any questions, you can put them in the Q&A or the chat. They can see them and they will answer them. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so if you guys floor is yours if you guys want to start.
Hi, everybody. Whilst we are just loading, why doesn't everyone tell us where they're from in the United States? I'm just going to share this now. There we go. Share. All right, can we all see that? World slides. Yeah. Can you see that? Are we sharing our screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So Luke and I work for the David Shepherd Wildlife Foundation, and it's lovely to see you all today. You can see that tiger behind us. We're an organisation that actually supports a variety of animals around the world, and we're going to tell you a little bit about our organisation. We're going to do some practice on animals, and then we're going to tell you a little bit about coexistence. So my name is Mark Ellis, and I'm actually the education manager of the David Shepherd Wildlife Foundation. And we deliver large amounts of education content around the world. And most of our delivery in our team is in the UK. Luke, introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Luke. I'm the head of marketing at David Shepherd. As you can see, I'm from that photograph. I'm also important enough to have two bodyguards most of the time. As Mark said, we specialize in the conservation of endangered species, 8 mammals which are critically endangered around the world in both Africa and Asia. We're very keen and excited to introduce you to some of our work and some of our species.
So a quick thank you. These are some of the organisations that we actually fund around the world. Game Rangers International are in Zambia. Painted Dog Conservation are in Zimbabwe. Musacasi Conservation is also in Zambia. So much of what you actually see and hear is from them. We actually take stories from around the world and use them in our own narrative. So thank you very much to all of those organisations to help us with all of this. Just in case you didn't know, David Shepherd was a wildlife artist, and he spent all of his time painting lions and tigers and other animals. And in 1984, he set up a charity, and that charity actually looks after and supports 8 animals. Luke is now going to tell us the names of the 8 animals as a test.
Well, there you go. So these are the 8 species that we specialize in, and all of these species are endangered. They're all on what's known as the red list. So they're all in trouble, basically. So starting at the top there, chimpanzee, we probably all recognize. Then we've got elephants, rhinos, the dog there, which is very recognizable, probably to most of you probably have pet dogs or know who people do, but that is a wild dog, also known as a painted dog, or a Cape hunting dog, or an African hunted dog, or even a painted wolf, has lots of names. Then we have the snow leopard, another big cat, and the pangolin, followed by tigers and lions. And again, you can see we've got 3 big cats that we represent, and all of the big cats are unfortunately all in trouble, particularly tigers, whose historical population has been reduced by 96% just in 100 years. In fact, there's actually more tigers in your country, in USA, than there are in the wild.
Which always staggers me that there are actually more in private collections than in the wild. Okay, so that's the animals that we actually support. Now, what we're going to do as a bit of a warm-up is go on a quick safari. Now, we're going to ask you a few questions, and we'll see if you actually know any of the answers as well. Okay, so in the chat function, if we ask a question, have a go and answer a few questions. So this is Luke and I went to Zambia and Zimbabwe in the dry season in September. And what you can see here are some of the things that we actually discovered and found out about the animals. And then once we've done that, we'll look at 3 examples of coexistence and how that actually works. So, in case anyone's not sure, we're going to Africa, which is that one there. Okay, and we're going to. You can just see them there. There's Zambia and there's Zimbabwe down the bottom there. So if you find South Africa, move up through Botswana. There's Zambia in Zimbabwe. Okay. And then we went to the national parks. The national park in Zambia is Kafue. The national park we went to in Zimbabwe is Hwange. So let's go on a safari. And this is the safari bus for the Painted Dog Conservation. And they take large numbers of local children to go and see the animals, because local people don't necessarily actually see the animals themselves because they're all in the national park and it costs quite a lot of money to get into the national park. So this organization is funded all from lots of places around the world to actually take local people into the park. So what you see there, by the way, is a termite mound, just in case you weren't sure. So here we go. Let's go into the park. And it's really rough. So you need to keep your mouth shut, otherwise you might actually bite your tongue, because it's shivery and shivery. And what we're doing there is looking all around us for the different kinds of animals that we can actually see. And this is you can see here, this is actually the teak forest. And we're driving through the teak forest. It's not always obvious where the animals actually are, and you need someone with you with a bit of experience to spot them. And this was the first animal that we actually saw. I don't know if anyone actually knows what that is, but if you've got a name, or if you can think of who that is and what that animal is, put it in the chat function, and let's see if you can actually guess. So if you can get, we've got an answer there. Let's have a look in the chat function. Anyone know? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It's right. Yeah, gazelle. Well done. Yeah.
And the name of that gazelle is
Alfred.
Alfred. Is it an impala? I think it's probably an impala. And you can see, you can see they're quite used to the trucks, and they actually tend to ignore human beings as long as you stay in the truck. So that's the impala. Well done for that one. Now that one should be easy. Anyone got any idea what that is? Put it in the chat function. That one should be easy. Some of these are more difficult, clearly. Anyone know what that one is? Oh, giraffe.
Giraffe.
Well done. Excellent. So you can see there the giraffe is actually drinking. And drinking is quite risky for giraffes. Explain what?
So, as you can see there, one of the issues that giraffes have is their actual size. So, getting close to the water is actually incredibly difficult. They have to adopt this pose where they bend down, bend their front legs, and bring themselves down to the water. But that compromises them because they can't run away from the water's edge. So in these pools where there might be crocodiles, there might be hippos, there might be other things, they can't get away quick enough, and they are vulnerable to attack from the rear by things like lions as well. So taking a drink is really risky if you're a giraffe.
Definitely. We stopped here then, and you can see a few animals here. Apologies for the camera work. It's my bad camera work, but you can just see there. You can see a warthog. There's a little baby warthog there as well. There's a warthog. And wandering around is an impala there as well, another gazelle. And you should see, there's the gazelle. There are a few baboons as well. That's a baboon, isn't it?
That is, yeah. So that's what a type of baboon called an olive baboon, which are the native species in Zimbabwe and Zambia.
Okay. Quite pleased about seeing a warthog. We saw loads of them, didn't we? I seem to remember. And then, there was one drinking down there, wasn't there? Yeah, drinking. And then we saw the elephants, which were amazing.
They were amazing. But
we did cry a few tears on our odd occasion, but we kept our sunglasses on. But there you go. There are the elephants there. They're looking a bit thin, aren't they?
yeah, no, those elephants are actually incredibly friendly. Mark and I actually got charged at least twice by elephants whilst we were there.
Okay, so there are the elephants. Now, I don't think we need to ask anyone what this is called, but you need to tell us what they call them in Zambia, which I thought was really funny.
Ah, yes. So this is my favourite, or certainly my new. So they're zebras, but the local guides like to call them disco donkeys. So disco donkeys because they got the stripes and they look a bit funky. They're known as disco donkeys locally.
Quite like that. Clearly, a herbivore. They're all looking at us there. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So this is basically a quick safari. Now, we are going to ask you the names of this one. Anyone put in the chat what this one's called? Anyone know? I'm not frightened of silence. Anyone know what they're called? Come on, wildlife specialists.
We've got a couple.
We've got a couple here. Let's have a look. An ox.
No, although similar family.
Is it?
Yeah. So yeah. Similar family. So they're a hooved mammal. They're an ungulate.
Yeah.
But they're not too far. But these are actually wildebeest, blue wildebeest in particular. But they're also known as a gnu.
Okay. I quite like them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, look. Now, if you've never seen one before, these are painted dogs. Tell us something about painted dogs.
Okay, so painted dogs are unfortunately one of the rarest carnivores in Africa, and they're actually one of the most rarest mammals in the world. But one of the cool things is you can see here that they've got this really amazing, coloration where they're black and yellow and white. But when they're actually born just white and black.
Sorry.
And the markings, the only ones that stay are the white markings. The black ones will change into the brown and the yellow that you see there. But when they're born, they basically look a bit like Dalmatians. They're just black and white.
Right. Didn't know that. And it's true they only sneeze, is that right?
They sneeze, they have about 20 different sounds they make. They yip, they yicker, make squeals, they get very excited. They don't really bark, which is strange for dogs, but they do make about 15 to 20 different noises. They're also known as hypercarnivores. They have actually different dentition because they've adapted to almost purely meat diet.
Okay. I put this in because one of the things which drove me to distraction with the tsetse flies, which you can see flying around here, I didn't realize that if you wear dark clothing, you get covered in them. So I got covered in them. And I think that elephant is completely sick of tsetse flies as well. So and that's what we're doing there. And then we got the lions. I think you all recognize lions, don't you? There's the male. What can you tell us about lions?
So lions are the only big cat species that live socially. They live together in a family group known as a pride, which I'm sure you all know. It's normally made up of a male or several males, known as a coalition. If there's several of them, who with a family of females.
Sorry.
And they will have all the females can produce cubs, and they will raise them together. The male cubs are kicked out of the pride normally at 2 to 3 years old, but the females are allowed to stay.
Excellent. This was my favorite shot. By the way, have a good look and see if you can spot the crocodile. I couldn't see it. There's a crocodile in there waiting to eat something. How much water do these elephants actually drink? I think it's about two bathtubs, is it?
So minimum of 2 bathtubs a day. It's about they could drink up to 30 liters in one go.
Oh, there we go. Oh, you think you can
Fix
see it?
it.
Oh, here we go. I'll point it out to you. Don't know if you can see it, but there it is there. Can you see it? There's that crocodile there, just waiting in the water. There you go. What's that? Anyone know what that is? Put it in the chat if you know what that one is. Take a guess.
It's a hard one.
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
I didn't know what that was until it got pointed out to me. Oh, we don't have an answer. I think you might have to tell everybody.
So this is one of the largest.
Oh,
we
here
got.
we go.
Well, yes, it is a hoofed mammal.
Oh,
yeah, very good.
You're
Yeah,
listening. You're
yeah, yeah.
listening.
It is an antelope. It's actually the biggest antelope that lives in Africa. It's the kudu, or sorry, second biggest antelope that lives in Africa. It's the kudu, and this is a female. Because it's not sporting the incredible antlers that the male kudus have. But yeah, this is a kudu, very beautiful antelope. You can see it's got these lovely white stripes there, very pretty sort of W mark on its front. Those lovely big ears. Really pretty animal, but very large. So stands at the shoulder, almost as high as me, and I'm 5'11", so 180 centimeters. So
Okay. Now, Luke, you'll have to tell us what this is.
so this was, you can probably can't quite see, but this is a scan we did of a hyena track, which we found on the trail, not too far, literally just outside our camp. And this is a 3D scan that we took in the early morning of the hyena, and we can see that this is the rear pad. These are the toes that you can see here.
Oh, sorry.
But yeah, and we can tell lots of things about this. We can tell the size of the animal, whether it's an adult, whether it's a female, the size of these because they're really big. This is probably a female. So because hyenas are one of the few animals, or sort of few mammals, where the female is bigger than the males because she has to be, because otherwise the males might eat the pups.
Oh, didn't know that. Okay. So we're coming to the end. We saw some more elephants.
This is where Mark and I actually nearly got charged. So,
yes.
As we came around a corner, you can see this elephant here, which flaps its ears. He decided that they were going to go for us. But we didn't catch it on film because we were too scared.
Yeah. And this is the second to last shot. And I don't know. Did you cry? I slightly cried a tear when I saw the leopard there. I have to say it was absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So this is a very
sorry.
So this is a lovely female leopard who was locally named Kinktail because she had a little kink in her tail. So as she was driving, as she was walking along, you could see a little kink in her tail, and that's what she. But you could see how close we are. She was, within a meter or so of us, and very, very, very tolerant to us. Very sweet leopard.
And just to finish off our quick tour around the savannah, we discovered some. How many pups were there?
20.
There were 20 pups, all having a massive fight with each other. I think they'd just eaten that morning, so they weren't actually looking for food. So they were just having a bit of a play, and you can see them all there, just playing around.
That larger one is a sub-adult, so that's one of the pups from last year who's been left to babysit.
Okay. So that is a quick whistle-stop tour of the savannah. Okay. We've given you a little bit of information about the animals, and you've got some idea of what savannah is actually like. Now let's talk about coexistence. Why don't you just tell us really quickly, Luke, what you think coexistence actually is? What time of day were the pictures taken? When you go on safari, what time do you have to get up?
So we were regularly getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So we were getting up as soon as the sun came up, basically. So most of these were taken early in the morning. They were all taken before 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Existing together. Very good. That's absolutely right. So where we need to get to is coexistence, isn't it?
Yeah. So we need there's as you probably know, there's nearly 9 billion people on the planet, but we've got to learn to share that with all this wonderful wildlife. Otherwise, it's going to get very crowded, and there's not going to be enough room for all of us. So we need to work out how to live alongside them rather than being in conflict with them.
So we told you about Kafue National Park, and this is the park here. It's actually the size of Belgium. I should actually have worked out a state that it's actually the
I'm
size
trying to
of.
think where would be. It's probably as big as one of the Carolinas,
One of the
I would
Carolinas.
say. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So that's Kafue National Park, and you can see around it there are game management areas. So the park itself is completely protected, and the game management areas are a sort of like a buffer around the park. And local people actually decide exactly how to manage those areas there. But remember, there are no fences in this. There are very few fences, so everything can actually come and go as it pleases, which is what probably causes the problems for the elephants. The one thing you need to know about elephants is about eating. They eat and eat and eat and eat, don't they?
Yeah, literally, they will eat 20 hours a day if they can.
So, and that presents a problem because they don't differentiate what they eat. They eat the bark off trees. They'll eat anything they can get their hands on. Okay. And if you think about it, one of the big crops in Africa. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Agree with that. Two living things living. Yes, right. Human centric way of thinking. But that's a very good point there. Well done.
No, and true, coexistence is not often the most convenient to humans either. It's very
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. So this crop here, if you didn't know, is maize, and maize is the is a subsistence and cash crop across a lot of southern Africa. You grind it up and make powder, and you make what's it called?
Oh,
Shima.
Shima.
Shima, which is a bit like the consistency of mashed potato, and everybody eats that in across Africa. And most people that are farmers in this area actually grow maize. Okay. Another thing you need to remember is that they grow the maize in the wet season, and that actually that crop is what carries them through for the rest of the year. So they actually sell some of it, and then they eat the rest. So maize is very, very important, and you can see where I'm going with this because this is what can sometimes happen. And this was sent to us by Game Rangers International. You can see here that the elephants have come into the maize crop and they've eaten it. These elephants don't know that this is actually someone's crop and is their livelihood. They just actually see some plant material and they eat it. Okay. And you can see why elephant and human beings struggle to coexist in this context. These people are very, very, very unhappy. They're very angry. And this is why occasionally some of these elephants can get killed.
You gotta remember what it kind of represents is that this is a year's work for these people. And so if you can imagine doing a year's work at school and then in one night somebody came into your school and destroyed all of that work and you had to do it all again, how would that make you feel? Where would would you be able to do it? Would have the money to do it? Those are all things that these people are having to consider and deal with.
We're just going to dive quickly into Vietnam, but they have the same issue with elephants. I mean, in some ways, you talked about human centric there. These elephants probably been living in this area for what thousands of years.
Oh well, near enough a million.
Yeah. So just because we've put a fence up doesn't necessarily mean that they've got any interest in doing anything other than ignoring it. And that's what the elephant is doing. It's just pushing its way into the fence.
Yeah. Just so one of the things to think about with elephants as well is that they often use the same trackways over centuries. In fact, literally the best road in Zambia, it was an old elephant trackway because it was nice and straight and it was nice and flat. So they used it to put tarmac on. And now they've got problems there because the elephant herds come through pretty much every single day crossing the roads.
So you can imagine, I actually plant my banana farm on a path where the elephants have always gone for a large number of years, and they just eat the crop. Okay, they don't know that they're not supposed to do this, and they cause all this damage. And so you can understand that people that live with these animals on a day-to-day basis don't actually feel the same way about them that we might do, because this is their livelihood, and they get very, very angry. So we've got to actually say to ourselves, how would we feel if this was our crop? How would we feel if it was our banana farm? How would we feel if all our melons were eaten, all our mangoes were eaten, our trees were pushed down, and our bikes were trampled? And how would we feel in this situation? You can imagine how angry some people might feel about this. So here's the job for you. Here's the job. How do we actually stop elephants from crop raiding without actually hurting them? Now, that is the question. And I'm going to give you a few minutes. I'm going to give you a minute or two to try and come up with an answer. There are many answers we could actually give, but what would you do? This is real conservation, okay? How do we actually stop the elephants from damaging the crops and getting into the crops without hurting the elephants? What would we actually have to do? We've got a really quick answer there.
Indoor gardening.
Indoor gardening. So you could fence it, couldn't you? That's not as silly as it sounds. You could fence it, but you're in an area which is often 17 or 18 hours from buying fencing materials, and people don't necessarily have a lot of money. So big, heavy fences probably would work, but it's unlikely anyone could actually afford to do it. Got another idea there? Provide them with an alternative and better choice. That's a really interesting idea. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so that is literally coexistence in a nutshell. That's exactly what we would try and do. So yeah, these things like a greenhouse and things like that would absolutely work. The problem is that you're dealing with one of the poorest, sort of populations, out there. So a lot of the things that we would use, we can't technically, potentially facilitate or, make possible. Facilities we don't have, the building materials they don't necessarily have. But a greenhouse wouldn't be a terrible, but a tent or something, or a building of some kind wouldn't be the worst area.
Also, bear in mind that if this park is the size of one of the Carolinas, you're talking about massive fence lines, aren't you? And how do you write an alternative option for the elephants while making the crops now? So I don't know who that person is. It's a bit anonymous, this, isn't it? However, making the crops inconvenient for the elephants to access.
So that's exactly what one of the things they do. So there's a few things that they have tried which have really worked, and this is in both Asia and Africa. So some of these are Asian examples and some of them are African. But so one of the things that they have tried to do is they'll put a ditch round the crops. They'll try and do that.
Because elephants can't jump.
Because elephants can't jump. Secondly, one of the things that they will do is they'll use fireworks. So when the elephants trigger a tripwire or they come close, the community will go out and they'll set off fireworks. Believe it or not, one of the things that is really effective is the use of chili bombs. So again, we use chili to spice our foods, but most animals don't like it. It's actually a toxin that they know not to like. So when they hit these tripwires, these chili bombs go off. They don't harm the elephant in any way, but they leave a very unsavory, taste and smell in the air. And the other thing that they will do, believe it or not, particularly in Asia, is they will play loud rock music. So heavy metal and rock music will put an elephant off. But there is one other thing that is very successful. Can anyone think of it? It might be potentially using another animal.
Using another animal to scare them away. Anyone got any ideas? Any ideas in the chat?
No.
No idea is a silly one.
Cat. Yeah.
Cats.
No, so it's not a cat. Actually, believe it or not, one of the animal that makes an elephant really nervous is one of the smallest. You've probably heard about elephants getting worried about mice, but that's so that's the myth They don't. Everyone thinks they're scared of mice. They're actually scared of bees. They don't like bees. So actually, what they do is they keep they keep beehives and encourage wild swarms of bees around the crops to keep them off. It's interesting somebody put predator urine in there because that's a really good idea. I don't know if you stole that from Jurassic Park, but predator urine it's an interesting one. Elephants would react to it defensively and aggressively, so that's one of the reasons they wouldn't use that, because they would actually
start battering you. Right, we've done well. We'll do a bit more. So coexistence, let's have a think about lions. Okay, give us a crash course in lions, Luke. Is it the sound of the bees?
Yes, it is, but it's also because they are scared of being of being stung. Yeah, so that's really what it is. So with lions, I'm sure that you can imagine having these great big, you guys, I don't know whereabouts in the USA, but a lot of you will probably be used to having mountain lions around. These guys are nearly a third bigger, if not more, than a mountain lion. Very powerful, capable carnivores. And in these huge parks, it's not just wild animals that live there. There are farms with domestic animals. So, they'll be there with cattle, they'll be there with goats, and maybe sheep. And of course, the lions, like the elephants, they don't know the difference. But, all they know is that there's this very convenient food hanging around, happy to be killed and happy to be eaten, it would seem. And that's where you get the conflict, that they are potentially eating the livestock. That's where the biggest conflict comes from. There are other areas as well.
I mean, if there was a local snack bar near you and it was easy to get to and the food was nice, you'd probably go there, wouldn't you? And I think that's probably what the lions do. And cattle are very important in many places, especially in Zambia. And farmers are very fond of their cattle, and they've got all sorts of different uses. So they're used for all sorts of things, pulling carts, meat. They just like them as well.
Yeah.
And actually, they do buy and sell them a lot. So if you've got a lot of cattle, you've actually got quite a lot of income that you potentially have there. So the cattle are quite important to people, and you can imagine if a lion gets in, they're not going to live, are they?
No, the lions are very capable. Once they get in, they normally want to make off with one or two animals if they can.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen what the lions can actually do to cattle, and it's not pretty. But obviously, that's just what they actually do. That's
they are just being lions. They're not doing. I mean, as you can see, so this is a typical compound that they use to safeguard their livestock, their cattle, their sheep, their goats. It's called a boma, which is BOMA. But you guys are probably looking at, I mean, how much protection do you think that really affords the cattle and the goats? If you were a lion, do you think that would give you too much of a exactly right, slim to none? If you were a big determined lion, you could actually jump over that if you really wanted to.
And they do. So here's the question for you: how can we stop the lions from killing and eating the cattle without hurting the lions? What can we actually do? So how can we get the lions to coexist with the humans and the humans to coexist with the lions? How can we actually stop them killing and eating the cattle without causing the lions trouble and causing too much distress to the cattle?
Yeah, so proper fencing. So fencing that is one way that you could do it. Again, cost can be an issue, resources, materials, that can also be so it's not always a possibility for them. But yes, you could actually create fencing with sharpened edges and things like that does to help. Again, so warning alarms, so bells, sound systems, that sort of thing, trigger wires, that all helps. Those are all ways that they do use them. It's not some of the main ways, but it is something that they could do.
Any other ideas? We have got a few pictures that we can show you of some of the things. One of them I didn't really believe until I actually saw a picture of what they actually do. I couldn't believe it.
With water that works. So yeah. Well, actually, lions definitely don't like. They definitely don't like water. I wouldn't recommend getting close enough to a lion to spray it with water.
That might be a bit counterproductive.
That might not go well for you. But
right, here we go. So what do they actually do?
So this might look a bit better. If that worked, we'd all do them. Yeah. So here you can see it looks a bit bizarre, but you can see what looks like eyes that have been stamped onto the back of these cows, and that's a very simple, effective device because lions are predators that hunt and stalk by ambush, so they don't like their prey to see them coming. So if you use an eye stamp like this, the lion is constantly put off by circling and not being able to allegedly take the animal by surprise.
So they're sort of like that, going, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the eye stamp. Next. And this is actually really cheap. If the lions can't actually see the animals, they're less likely to try and catch them. That's true, isn't it?
That is so. Yeah. So when you were talking about better fencing, this is an example of doing that in a way that is sort of nature and it makes the most of the lion's behavior. If they can't see the animal, they're very unlikely to go. Even if they walk right past, which they will, and they can smell them and they can hear them, they still won't know. They still won't attack if they can't see them.
Yeah. Now, here's the best method, the one I really like. I couldn't get a picture that's completely obvious, but what you can see there is that is a light and that is a solar panel. And so what they do is they have LED lights that fire if the lions go anywhere near them. It was developed by a schoolboy in Kenya, and so if you actually hang a few lights around the boma or the kraal, then you can actually randomly fire the lights, and the lions will actually stay away. And you can see that it's not hugely expensive, is it? So all of these things have got to be cost effective, and this is one way of doing it. Clearly there's no mains electricity, so it's got to be run on batteries and solar panels, but it is one way of keeping the lions away, which is hugely effective. Okay, right, now we've come to our last coexistence, which is the painted dogs. This is a little bit sad, trigger warning, because painted dogs absolutely love the impala and the kudu. We actually saw a kill.
Yeah, we actually saw a very successful packs on two different kills, and one of the kills was a kudu, so a huge antelope, many times bigger than the dogs, but they managed to, working as a group, they managed to take in it.
So in this area, if someone actually wants some cheap or protein, they may actually try and trap one of these antelope. They might try and trap an impala and that kind of thing. And most people don't necessarily have a gun, and then the rounds you fire in a gun are quite expensive. So the cheapest thing to do is to actually use a snare. And you can see the snares on the right hand side there, and people will put out I don't know, 80 snares, and it's really just a piece of wire with a loop in it, and you either trap the leg or the neck of the animal. But these snares are not selective. Okay, they're not selective, which means you actually can trap anything. And painted dogs are very commonly trapped in these snares, aren't they?
Yeah, painted dogs, by their very nature, they're very curious. Again, if you've got dogs at home, you'll know that they're very curious. They like to investigate new things. They're very curious. They'll look into these things. They'll sniff around, and it's very easy for them to get caught in these snares, unfortunately.
That is a demonstration of a snare from one of the ranges that we saw. And you can see there, it's really hard to see the snare, isn't it? And they're also covered in a bit of leaf material, so it's impossible to see them. And you can actually put loads and loads of these snares out, leave them for a day, and then come back later.
They take about 30 seconds to set up, if you so you could do a lot in a day. It is basically, yeah. So what you can see there is, so it is a stick in the ground, but here is the wire loop. And then if you can see here, there is another wire going to the tree branch, and this would all trigger and pull the animal up and get caught around their legs, cuts off their blood supply. It's a very nasty, horrible thing to happen to them.
Yeah. So here's our question here, and this is actually the hardest one. How do we actually stop the painted dogs from getting trapped in the snares? That is actually quite a
It
hard
is a hard
question.
one.
So we've left it till the end. So you've warmed up, you've understood a little bit about well, how do we stop them from stopping using snares? Is probably the question. How do we actually stop them from using snares?
Yeah, so you're actually right. Yeah, absolutely. That's what we want to happen. We want people to love these animals like we do. So we need them to understand to stop putting snares out. However, we also understand that they do use these snares and traps to catch their food. So what else could we do? Maybe.
We'll give you a minute or two, but it is actually quite a hard question. So we've got a few ideas. Um, and what you will find out is just how clever painted dog conservation actually are in the way that they actually do this, because it's as much about managing the people as it is about managing the animals. This solution is not really about managing the animals at all.
No, it's about, so yeah, it's basically about changing people's minds and changing people's behavior.
So, ooh, first thing is they run bush camps for the children. And this is an amazing experience. They run these bush camps for the children all the way around the national park in Hawangi. They tell the children about the all of the wildlife. They show them how important it actually is. They see all the tourists actually coming. And this bush camp has been running for so many years that the children of the children of the children have actually come to this bush camp. And it's such a wonderful experience for them that everybody loves it and everybody knows what's going on. And so what they're doing is they're actually telling the youth how important the dogs are and how important they are to the local area.
So we met a woman who was serving our lunch here, and she would originally visited the camp as a child, and now she works there. And later on, we also met a ranger who attended this camp as a child, and now she is in their elite anti-poaching unit.
Mm. Right, you tell them about this, and I'll model these.
Okay, so this is in Zimbabwe, where they have an artisan jewelry group made up of the community members and artists who make these animals that you can see, which are made out of the old snare wire and beads.
So what they're basically doing is they're engaging with the local community, and then they deliver boreholes for water. They deliver clinics. They help set up businesses. They do deals with the local community.
Exactly. So basically, what they're doing is, instead of letting these people go out, or not letting, but instead of them going out and having to find sustenance by catching food, they're providing alternative livelihoods, really sustainable alternative ways of bringing in an income, a really dignified way of making income, but also a way of making income that they don't have to sell things like bushmeat, in order to bring in money in. They could do something like this, which is a respectable trade. It brings in more money. It normally takes some craft and skill to do. It's a skill set that can be taught to them, that they can carry on, pass on to their family, and also, which is really important as well, is it can be done by anyone. So it can be done in particular by women. So there's no gender inequality. There was a young lady there who had a couple of disabilities, that she was mute, but she was working there and was a gifted craftsperson, was able to do these things. So it gave them an alternative to what is quite a quite a hard living, which is catching food and trying to sell it, and it gave them a bit of dignity, gave them an alternative way of making some a way of making income for themselves.
So they
So
do
yes,
they do train people locally. Yes, yes, and they're very clever. What they're basically saying is, we'll do this thing for you, but what are you going to do for the dogs? If we're actually going to put you in a borehole, then for water, then what are we going to do for the dogs? How are you going to help the dogs? And it is true that one of the clinics they set up was because one of the uh, people, what was it?
so there was a medical clinic that they built for this local community.
Right, sorry.
There was a local community that they built this clinic because the community had decided that they were going to be on the side of the dogs, and they reported sightings of new dogs to PDC, Painted Dog Conservation, and therefore, because they were working with the conservation charity, they got this new clinic which provided things like a maternity unit. It was like it provided vaccines. It provided all of these things that this area didn't have. It even had an ambulance for a little while. Because they were happy to be pro dog. So they got this, it was this really effective way of rewarding these communities for working and protecting the dogs.
So they do deals all the time, and the way that they actually they are seen as leaders in the local area, and it's extremely impressive. And you can see it's not just about the animals. You've got to deal with the people. You've got to look after the people, and think of ways of clever ways of helping everybody coexist. I'll just finish, by the way, on they do run anti-poaching units, and this is Luke being attacked by one of the anti-poaching dogs.
Yeah, so this is one of the anti-poaching dogs called Natasha, who has now chased down and taken down at least 3 of us, David Shepherd.
Yeah, I refused.
Yeah, but she actually tracked a single bullet over an area of about 500 meters. So it gives you an idea of what these dogs can do with the right training.
So how can you help? You don't send me to Africa to try and save these animals. We send all our money to specialist organizations in Africa and Asia. If you want to find out more about what we actually do, we're happy to do online talks for schools in the US if you're interested. It is possible to donate to our projects directly in Africa and Asia using that button there. And if anybody is not aware, we actually have an art competition called Global Canvas. And the theme this year is actually coexistence. You've got to get your skates on, though, because it's due in on the 14th.
I was about to say, you've got a week left.
You've got a week before it actually goes in.
Still do something. So.
Okay. I think we've pretty much said everything that we wanted to say. So are there any questions that anyone actually has about what we've actually said, or anything else that they'd actually like to say? It'd be lovely to actually get a little bit of feedback on what we've just done. So feel free to ask a few questions. We'll wait for a few minutes, and then we'll end. That, by the way, is in Kala, isn't it?
Yeah,
yeah. That elephant there is in Kala. We run a rehabilitation centre. So Game Rangers International running a rehabilitation centre for the elephants. They rescue orphaned elephants from this coexistence problem we've described, because the mothers get killed, and then we bring them up, and Game Rangers International then release them back into the wild after about 10, 15
years. So it can be, it starts at around about, the earliest it can happen is 7 years, but it's normally around about the 10 to 12 years of age that they go back into the wild.
Yeah. So I'm going to stop sharing there. And there we go.
Is it okay for elephants to eat peanuts? So that's a really interesting question. So yeah, one of the things they used to do in zoos, particularly was they would allow you to buy peanuts to feed elephants. It's not a great idea. They're really high in fat. It's not really what they're used to eating. So it's actually really bad for them. But yeah, no, they much prefer, believe it or not, bark, trees, banana fields, unfortunately. But yes, but it's not good for them. It can mess with their diet a little bit. Can shorten their lives. They found a lot of
If you start feeding food that elephants don't normally eat to them, they start looking for it. Especially things like melons. Never give them bananas and things like that, because they'll start looking for melon farms.
Yeah.
And so it's very important that they actually are given and eat things which just that they get in the wild.
So Mark and I have worked together for 2 years nearly.
Feels like longer.
It feels like longer sometimes. But in terms of our coolest wildlife adventure, you've probably just seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Mark and I had not been to Africa before.
No.
And that was it. We had amazing adventures. But that moment with that leopard was probably the loveliest one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Actually seeing a leopard like that was just, you see them on the TV, don't you? Suddenly there was one there. It was amazing. The question there, I'll answer that one about what should you study. There is one general point that I will make first, and that is there are many jobs in conservation, okay? And they're not always necessarily about the animals directly, because Luke's got a degree in zoology, but he's actually a specialist in writing and marketing. You get designers, you get accountants, you get people who service the cars. You don't necessarily have to get dirty with the elephants to actually work in conservation. But a lot of people will get graduate qualifications in conservation, biology or zoology. If you want, there is another route which is a sort of a technician route, where you may actually do an apprenticeship, or you may get on the job training and do a vocational course in animal care, and then go into it in that way. And there are some people who do elephant rescue type work that went down that route. So I would say don't think necessarily that all jobs are working directly with the animals, because even if you're not keen on animals, you can be an accountant in a conservation charity, you can be a marketeer in a conservation charity, you can work in education in a conservation charity. There are large numbers of different jobs that you can do there.
And just to look at that question, what can you do as a college student? So like Mark's really just said, there are lots of ways that you can basically influence these things on your own. So if there's something you're really good at, use that to get a job with a charity, or use that as a way of volunteering with a conservation charity. That might open doors for you. You don't just have to be a zoologist or a biologist or a forestry, a specialist or something like that. All of these skills, social media, if you see something on social media which is about conservation and it does a great message, share that story on social media. That is spreading the message, telling people about these things. That is a really good way of doing great work. You're spreading the message, you're having these conversations. That's probably more important than anything else.
Last year, a student actually made a beautiful bookmark and sold it and sent us £100. He actually raised funds for us. What happened if you got a step in a snare? Because human beings have got fingers, you'd probably be able to get out of the snare, because it is actually just a loop of wire. The animals struggle because they can't actually undo the loop of wire, and then they struggle and get trapped by it.
If any of these animals went into all of these animals that we've looked at, these are keystone species, and what that means is they have a huge influence on their ecosystem. So for instance, elephants are known as landscape engineers. So elephants basically they create water holes by creating trackways. Their dung is so incredible that it can have seeds in it, and it causes new saplings and things to grow like that. So without elephants, we wouldn't have these amazing landscapes to enjoy. If you didn't have carnivores like lions and wild dogs, you'd have huge numbers of prey species, which would then die because they would starve because they've eaten all of the resources. You would have these carcasses of these animals all over the landscapes. You'd have disease, which would be spread by things like tsetse flies and other parasites and scavengers, that sort of thing. Really horrendous things can happen. Without these animals, but they basically manage their ecosystems for us, and really they just need to be allowed to be left alone and do the work that they do, because it's really, really, really vital.
One final thing to say about that is obviously in the UK, we killed all of our top carnivores. We killed all of our bears and all of our wolves and all of our lynxes a long time ago. And what it does mean is that we have to look after our land, or it has to be managed all the time. Whereas in a pristine wilderness, it looks after itself. And also, all of these ecosystems are different, so we don't know exactly what will happen to each ecosystem if you remove one of the major species.
Yeah. Just to look at that last question, how much has US aid helped with this work? Haven't got an exact figure for you, I'm afraid. All I can tell you is give you an example of a story recently. So one of our projects in Asia, which is called Freeland, which helps tigers. They were relying on I think something between $3,000 and $5,000 a year to come in from US aid for this one charity. And that obviously recently, with that being stopped, we've now had to provide that stopgap for them. Whilst US aid is being sort of decided and looked at. So I'm sure it's vital. As I say, most of our income comes from Europe and sort of and Africa and Asia itself. We don't do too much in the US yet, but we would absolutely like to. So,
do you think elephants are allergic to bees?
No more than any other animal.
Yeah.
So they just don't like being stung.
Yeah. And just quickly here, the locals use bees, chili bombs, death metal, rock music, ditches around the
crops.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen them actually use
and firecrackers,
chili guns. I think that's about it.
That's it. Yeah, those are the main ones.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's some really great questions there, and I think our time is up. So thank you very much. I don't know what we do now, but I think we're done. So well done, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for presenting.
We really appreciate it.
Good. Thank you.
No worries. And we'll see you all soon.
Well, I personally enjoyed this. Thank you so much. Everything you showed is very interactive, so it was very fun, actually very entertaining. And for being the last ones of the day, we were very, very focused and interested.
Good. Well, as long as nobody fell asleep, that's great.
No one did.
Yeah. Okay. All right then. Don't forget, if we could repeat this to other places in the US online. Most of our talks are usually 20-25 minutes long, so they're much shorter than this, but feel free to drop me a line if anybody wants something like this again. Okay. And have a good afternoon where you are, isn't it? Have a good afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Well, yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.